Welcome to the Agile Career Podcast, where we will take you on the journey from employed for life to employable for life. We'll give you the tips, insights, and strategies to help you build the transferable skills that you'll need. So let's get started. Please welcome your host, Günther Richter.
Hello listeners, and welcome to the Agile Career Podcast. This is episode 16, and in this episode I'm going to be talking about coaching. Now, this has come up in a number of episodes. A number of guests have spoken about coaching. They also spoken about mentoring. But I think the most relevant one is on episode 11, where I interviewed Crystal Metcalf. And Crystal spoke about starting a new job, and as part of her negotiated package was to have a coach when she started at the organization. And this was to help her build some of the skills that she thought she needed to be successful in the role, and obviously achieve some goals that she might have set out for that role specifically. So I wanted to take this opportunity to talk a little bit more about coaching and talk about what it is and what it means, and what are some of the common questions and misunderstandings around coaching, and really just to kind of share a little insight into coaching. So before we get into some of the detail, I thought it would be good to think about the definition of coaching. So what does it mean? Well, I looked far and wide, and I looked to some organizations that oversee coaching and provide certifications and those sorts of things. And I went firstly to the International Coaching Federation, the ICF, and looked at their definition. And their definition of coaching is a process which involves partnering with clients in a thought-provoking and a creative process that inspires them to maximize both their personal and professional potential. I also looked at the Association of Coaching, and this is the way that the Association of Coaching describes it: a collaborative, solution-focused, results-oriented, and systematic process in which the coach facilitates the enhancement of work performance, life experience, self-directed learning, and personal growth of the coachee. Now, looking at a number of things in common here, it really just talks about, I suppose, a relationship, a partnership, working together. It's about maximizing your potential, getting the best out of yourself, learning and development. So some sort of common themes. And those are the formal definitions, but people often say, well, what's the difference between consulting and mentoring, for example, or consulting and coaching, or coaching and mentoring? So I've thought about it this way, and I guess if we look at consulting in the first instance, typically as a consultant, you're engaged by a client to achieve a specific outcome or to provide advice. And this typically involves you as the consultant, or the consultant that you've hired, really doing all the work, so putting in the thought, putting in the effort to help you achieve those goals, or achieve the objective of your project, whatever it is. Now, mentoring is kind of a little bit different, and that is probably more of a kind of 50-50 relationship when you think about the effort, I suppose, that goes into it, if that's the right word. And mentoring is often a tool that's used in organizations for career development, and that's usually a discussion, a two-way discussion, as all discussion should be. But it is often the mentor providing advice, setting goals for the mentee, suggesting ways those goals could be achieved, talking about what might have worked for them in the past. So it seems it's a little more, directed, and still offering an element of advice like a consultant would. But again, it's kind of a more two-way street where both parties do the talking, whereas with consulting, it's the consultant that does most of the talking. Now, contrasting then that to coaching, I think, again, it's a two-way communication, a relationship. But in a coaching environment, the coach does less talking than the coachee. So it's quite a lot different from consulting. And it's the conversation is directed or facilitated by the coach, but it's about asking questions of the coachee, and have the coachee do all the talking, and then generating insight out of that. So quite easy to explain on a graphic, and I might pop one up alongside the speaking notes, or provide a link to one. So hopefully that clears up the difference between consulting, mentoring, and coaching. And the next thing is to look at the different types of coaching, and there's a lot out there. I think coaching, most often we think about sports coaches, You think about tennis stars, football stars, rugby stars, and those sorts of things, and how they all have coaches. There's other types of coaching, like personal coaches, so coaches that'll help you achieve your goals around relationships and family in your personal life. Career coaches, fitness coaches, health coaches. There's a lot out there, and coaching is obviously the sort of umbrella that describes all of those. And I think the context for this discussion is more around the sort of personal and career coaching. So I'm going to stick with those examples. So let's look at a few questions. People ask, how would I find a coach? Well, because there's a lot of coaches out there, there's a lot of platforms available. So I think it's important to ask yourself a few questions when you're looking for a coach. And firstly, it's understanding what you need. So, why is it that you are struggling to achieve the objectives? Where are your blockers? Factor that into why you're looking for a coach and the sort of coach that you might need, and try and narrow down the candidates that can help you achieve what it is you want to achieve. What I'd also suggest is looking at your network first. So, you probably do know someone who does coaching. They might not be a formal coach, or it might not be their business, but they might have the skills and they might have the aptitude to do that. So look at your network first. It's often easier asking people that you know and people that you deal with for help or to help you on your journey. There might be a reason why you wouldn't want to do that. You might want a level of anonymity, but I'd suggest looking at your network first and starting there. Or speak to people that have gone through coaching, and perhaps they can recommend a coach as well. The other thing to consider is if you have a candidate or a number of candidates that you might want to employ as a coach, ask yourself the question, and ask them as well, is can they help you achieve the outcome that you want? So coaching is all about results, and it's like any project. It has a start and an end, and you want to be able to get to that end, and you want a person who's going to be coaching you to be able to get those results, or to help you get those results that you need. So those are the key things I think to consider. The next question that people often ask is, does coaching really work? The answer is yes, and I think to put this in a bit of context, I'm going to use a bit of a sporting analogy here. And I think breaking it down, in order to be successful, a coaching relationship to be successful, you need a good coach. And the coachee needs to be coachable. If that person's not coachable, then you're not going to have a great outcome. And drawing this parallel in sport, as I've said, is looking at someone like Eddie Jones. Now, most of us will know Eddie Jones as the coach of the England rugby team. But looking back in history, by no means was Eddie Jones a phenomenal rugby player, mediocre at best, and not to take anything away from him. But certainly he didn't play rugby at an international level. But then you look at when he turned his hand to coaching, and you look at the work that he did with a number of teams, and I'm just talking about, firstly, one of the teams was South Africa, and he helped them not as the head coach, but as one of the other coaches to achieve a World Cup win. And he then moved on to coach Japan, and I don't think Japan is traditionally known as a strong rugby nation. And when we look at the World Cup in it was 2015, I think it was, and there was a game in Brighton. It was Japan versus South Africa. It was obvious South Africa was going to win. They were the champions, one of the favourite champions for the for winning the World Cup. And in a phenomenal game, Japan beat South Africa in the last few minutes, and it was a major upset. And lots of that credit goes to Eddie Jones for being such a great coach. And then, of course, he went on to coach England, and he's really turned around the England rugby team, and by doing some fantastic work. So again, looking at that, a good coach, someone who has those coaching skills, and then coaching teams that are actually coachable. So that's what you need to make coaching work, is a good coach and being a coachable person. The next question that people often ask is coaching right for me? Well, what I would say about that is, if you're serious about achieving your goals and you're willing to put the work in, then coaching could be the right thing for you. I think it's important to note that a coach is not going to give you the answers. A coach is going to help you arrive at those answers by applying your thinking, your insight. So it's not an easy, quick fix. It's not like going to a consultant and saying, can you do this project for me, or can you do this thing for me? As a coachee, you do need to put in the work yourself, because otherwise that's not going to work. So, that's the thing to consider when thinking if coaching is the right thing for you. So how does coaching work? Well, as we see again, sometimes it's a skills-based thing. When we talk about sport, but thinking about it in the career or the personal perspective, I think the key things about coaching and why coaching works so well is that it brings new and fresh perspectives to you as an individual. It can help you set your direction as an individual. Very importantly, coaching or a good coach will hold you accountable. So very often the reason that people don't make progress towards their goals is because there isn't any accountability. And it's very easy to say, I'll do that later, or I'll do that next week, or I'll do that next month, or I won't do that at all. So this is why coaching can be so powerful, is to help hold you accountable. Also, it improves your self-awareness, and this came up in one of our episodes as well, where I interviewed Jessica Pybus, and she talked about the power of knowing yourself and understanding yourself. And in order to do that, a coach will help you a long way to improving your self-awareness. And then also, a coach helps you adapt to change, but more importantly, helps you drive change. So sometimes people find it really difficult to drive change and make the changes they need to achieve their goals. And that's something that a coach can help you do very well. Now, looking at some of the numbers, in terms of saying, does coaching work? Well, I talked about the International Coaching Federation earlier on at the start of the show, and they commissioned a survey that was performed by PricewaterhouseCoopers, in which they interviewed over 2,000 coaching clients from across 64 countries. And the respondents reported improvements in things like self-esteem, improved communication skills, improved interpersonal skills, improved work performance, improved relationships, and an improved work-life balance. Now, looking at some of the ones that I've gone through there, these are many of the transferable skills that we've been talking about and drawing out in some of the shows. Those communication skills, the soft skills, interpersonal skills, relationship building, finding balance between work and life. So, this is, I think, really good testament of how good coaching and how successful coaching can be. So what does a typical coaching relationship look like, or a life cycle? This obviously is going to differ from coach to coach, and, it's going to differ depending on what it is you're looking to get out of a coaching relationship. But broadly, what you would typically do is have an initial session with a coach, and, it's often done to check if you and the coach are a good match for each other. You might do this with more than one coaching candidate, so you might draw down a narrow list of candidates and have this initial chat with them to make sure that the services they're offering are the right services for you. And also, at a personal level, is it easy to have a conversation with a coach? Is it easy to get on with them? So that would be an initial session, usually to check if you're right for each other. And then once you proceed, it'll become a little more formal. And one of your early sessions will be one to establish your goals and, what you want to get from that coaching relationship. So it could be something like working towards a career progression. It could be starting off your own business. It could be building your presentation skills or communication skills, any of those sorts of things. The reason that you're hiring that coach. So what are those goals you want to achieve? And what is that you need to get from that coaching relationship to help you achieve those goals? Next, then, you'll break it down into a little more of a detailed work plan, which might involve a monthly session or a weekly session, a regular check-in with your coach, and how you might ask for ad hoc support, for example. And that then sort of sets the scene and plans out the rest of the coaching journey and relationship. You also think about how you're going to measure progress and learning, so how are things going to change over time? How are you progressing in getting closer to your objective? And then ultimately, I think the end of the relationship would be when you've achieved that objective and it's a success. It's not to say that the relationship ends then. You might engage the coach to develop further or to tackle some more goals. But by and large, that's what the overall journey would look like. So what would a coaching session look like then? Again, this is a fairly generic description, and it would change from coach to coach, and it would change based on your requirements and your needs. But typically in a session, you'd agree on what you're going to focus on in that session, what the desired outcome of that session is, whether it's addressing a particularly thorny issue, or whether it's kind of progressing a step towards your goal, or whether it's needing to do something in the coming week or the coming month. You kind of shape up what that session was going to focus on. You'd also review and carry over any actions from previous sessions. So again, I spoke about accountability, and this might be where you have that check-in, and the coach is going to hold you to account and say, well, in the last session you agreed to do these 3 things. Have you done them? If you haven't done them, why haven't you done them? So talking about those actions. Then you'd obviously work through the agreed topic, and you continue to refine your overall goals. And typically then towards the end of the discussion, you would then summarize any ideas or insights or further actions that had come from that conversation, and then talk about the next steps, whether it was then setting some goals for the coming weeks before you meet your coach again, whether it was to take any specific steps or actions, and then you would close off the coaching session and then progress, and then obviously meet again. So that's a very broad description of what a typical coaching relationship or kind of journey looks like. At the start, I also talked about dispelling some coaching myths, or kind of talking about some untruths or misconceptions around coaching. And one of the very common ones is people saying, well, is coaching, it's just the same as therapy or counselling, isn't it? And I think the thing to say here is it's not the same thing. Coaching is very much concerned with looking forwards. It's around working to and progressing, making progress towards those goals you've set out. Whereas therapy or counselling tends to deal with issues in the past. So it could be some form of trauma. It could be physical trauma or emotional trauma. And therapy and counseling typically tend to work around helping you move on from that, and improving things that were made bad by that traumatic event. So, some sort of key differences between the two. There is an element of overlap in terms of some of the skills potentially, and those relationship building and conversational and problem solving skills. But coaching is very much a different, a different beast from therapy or counseling. Another misconception is that coaching takes a lot of time. And again, I don't think this is the truth. It's you do need to invest time and effort, obviously. But, a coaching, it could be a 15-minute check-in. It could be 1 hour a month that you spend with your coach. So, it's not an intense thing where you're talking for hours on end, or, spending days going through sort of coaching discussions. So it is something that can be done with not loads of time. Obviously, as I said, you do have to put in the work, because out of those coaching sessions will come some actions, and those are what you need to follow up. The other thing is that, it's often seen that coaching is something that gets done to you. It's the coach directing you, and the coach making you do or achieve what the coach thinks you need to achieve. And that's absolutely not the truth. In truth, the coach is there to help you achieve what you've determined you want that outcome to be, not what the coach wants it to be. And that's really clear distinction that I wanted to make there. There's another misconception that coaches need to have a similar background or be in the same industry to you. Again, that's not necessarily true. It does help sometimes, if you're looking for some industry-specific knowledge or trying to deal with a specific challenge. But I think the value in having a coach that comes from a different background is that sort of breadth of knowledge and experience, and the different bits of insight that they can bring to that coaching relationship. So again, I'd say it's not necessary to have a coach who has a similar background or be in the same industry as you. The next misconception is quite closely related to that, and it's often said that, coaches need to be a rock star to coach a rock star, or they need to be a CEO to coach a CEO, or they need to be a sports star to coach a sports star. Again, that's not true. Looking back at the example of Eddie Jones, as I said, he was a mediocre rugby player, but, certainly a fantastic coach. So Yes, he's obviously got some of the expertise in terms of the game, but he's coached World Cup winning teams, not having won a World Cup himself. So again, that just hopefully puts things in perspective. And then the last one I wanted to cover off, there's also a misconception that coaching is a luxury. It's massively expensive. I wouldn't say it's a luxury. It's about thinking about your personal development and investing in yourself. And, that sort of thing is absolutely essential. If you don't grow, that's really detrimental to your success in your personal life or your work life or whatever it is. So don't see coaching as a luxury, see it as a necessity, because it's going to help you on that personal development path, and it's going to help you achieve the goals that you want to be achieving. So yeah, that's coaching in a nutshell. We've covered off quite a bit, I think, in 20 odd minutes. And what I'll do is I'll write these up on the show notes as well. If you do have any questions, please do get hold of me. Drop me a note. You can get hold of me at info@agilecareerpodcast.com. Please drop me a note. I love to hear from my listeners. I'm happy to answer any questions off air or kind of working any responses in future shows. So please do get hold of me. I'd love to have a chat about coaching and answer any more questions that you might have. And then also, please feel free to leave a review for the show. Go to Apple Podcasts, leave a review, or whichever platform it is that you listen on. And just to end off then with, again, a thank you for your time. I do really appreciate the time you invest in listening to these podcasts. And I look forward to talking to you in the next episode. Bye-bye, and take care of yourselves.